Finally made it over to storage unit. I was delayed, happily playing Star Wars: The Old Republic with my brother. We were on the planet Nar Shaddaa, which is kind of a Blade Runner planet. Lots of noise and racket from other people. Okay, so I brought over this milk crate. Musical structure and design by Cedric Thorpe Davey. Some kind of anime book. Steal some of those drawings. It's popular art form. The Conscious Reader. It's never a dull moment in this storage unit. Let's see. Anime. Hey. I'm not too big of a fan of anime. Fine portrait miniatures. That's kind of cool. Oh, the Dune storybook. I'm gonna have to read this for a video. I've seen this movie 5 times. Let's see. The Vampire Versus. Oh. Hellstorm. Some, yeah. Son of Satan comic book. Sin City. Hey, here we go. X-Force. Star Wars Republic. Alright. There's Spectacular Spider-Man. Hey, Johnny the Homicidal Maniac. It's my favorite one. Self-Loathing Comics by Robert Crumb. I like that one too. Here's another Johnny. Yeah, he's a talented guy. Puffin Stuff and Other Stuff. Man, I used to watch that show a lot as a kid. I used to love it. Jimmy! More anime. Hey, she's naked. I can't show that on YouTube. Even though it's just a drawing. People in the States are a little uptight. A Reminiscence of Dr. Samuel Johnson. The last video we finished up with Dagon, so let's see what happens here. This whimsy appears to have been written shortly before its first and only appearance in Lovecraft's lifetime in the United Amateur, November 1917, as by Humphrey Littlewhite, Esquire. It is a brilliant send-up of Lovecraft's well-known fondness for the 18th century, and is written in a flawless imitation of the prose of Samuel Johnson. Many details in the story, including the quatrain, "When the Duke of Leeds shall married be," are taken from Boswell's Life of Johnson, 1791. But the revision of that quatrain is Lovecraft's own, reflecting his thankless job as a literary revisionist. The privilege of reminiscence, however rambling or tiresome, is one generally allowed to the very aged. Indeed, it is frequently by means of such recollections that the obscure occurrences of history and the lesser anecdotes of the great are transmitted to posterity. Though many of my readers have at times observed and remarked a sort of antique flow in my style of writing, it hath pleased me to pass amongst the members of this generation as a young man, giving out the fiction that I was born in 1890 in America. I am now, however, resolved to unburthen myself of a secret which I have hitherto kept through dread of incredulity, and to impart to the public a true knowledge of my long years in order to gratify their taste for authentic information of an age with whose famous personages I was on familiar terms. Be it then known that I was born on the family estate in Devonshire on the 10th day of August 1690, or in the new Gregorian style of reckoning, the 20th of August, being therefore now in my 228th year. Coming early to London, I saw as a child many of the celebrated men of King William's reign, including the lamented Mr. Dryden, who sat much at the tables of Will's Coffee House. With Mr. Addison and Dr. Swift, I later became very well acquainted and was an even more familiar friend to Mr. Pope, whom I knew and respected till the day of his death. But since it is of my more recent associate, the late Dr. Johnson, that I am at this time desired to write, I will pass over my youth for the present. I had first knowledge of the doctor in May of the year 1738, though I did not at that time meet him. Mr. Pope had just completed his epilogue to his satires, the piece beginning, "Not twice a 12-month you appear in print," and had arranged for its publication. On the very day it appeared, there was also published a satire in imitation of Juvenal, entitled London, by the then unknown Johnson, and this so struck the town that many gentlemen of taste declared it was the work of a greater poet than Mr. Pope. Notwithstanding what some detractors have said of Mr. Pope's petty jealousy, he gave the verses of his new rival no small praise, and having learnt through Mr. Richardson who the poet was, told me that Mr. Johnson would soon be deterred. It's a French word. D-E-T-E-R-R apostrophe over the E. I had no personal acquaintance with the doctor till 1763, when I was presented to him at the Maitre Tavern by Mr. James Boswell, a young Scotchman of excellent family and great learning, but small wit, whose metrical effusions I had sometimes revised. Dr. Johnson, as I beheld him, was a full, pursy man, very ill-dressed, and of slovenly aspect. I recall him to have worn a bushy bob wig, untied and without powder, and much too small for his head. His clothes were of rusty brown, much wrinkled, and with more than one button missing. His face, too full to be handsome, was likewise marred by the effects of some scrofulous disorder, and his head was continually rolling about in a sort of convulsive way. Of this infirmity, indeed, I had known before, having heard of it from Mr. Pope, who took the trouble to make particular inquiries. Being nearly 73, full 19 years older than Dr. Johnson, I say doctor, though his degree came not till 2 years afterward, I naturally expected him to have some regard for my age, and was therefore not in the fear of him, which others confessed. On my asking him what he thought of my favorable notice of his dictionary in the Londoner, my periodical paper, he said, "Sir, I possess no recollection of having perused your paper, and have not a great interest in the opinions of the less thoughtful part of mankind. Being more than a little piqued at the incivility of one whose celebrity made me solicitous of his approbation, I ventured to retaliate in kind, and told him I was surprised that a man of sense should judge the thoughtfulness of one whose productions he admitted never having read. "Why, sir," replied Johnson, I do not require to become familiar with a man's writings in order to estimate the superficiality of his attainments, when he plainly shows it by his eagerness to mention his own productions in the first question he puts to me. Having thus become friends, we conversed on many matters. When, to agree with him, I said I was distrustful of the authenticity of Ossian's poems, Mr. Johnson said, "That, sir, does not do your understanding particular credit, for what all the town is sensible of is no great discovery for a Grub Street critic to make. You might as well say you have a strong suspicion that Milton wrote Paradise Lost." I can't handle all the racket anymore. Thanks for listening.